So to the topic. So today's speaker is Bill Carolan. Bill has been a member of Red Bank Humanists for many years, and he's a certified humanist celebrant. So if you want someone to preside over a wedding or some other significant event in your family, you can call on Bill. Today, Bill will tell us about some of the interesting details of that recent Alabama Supreme Court decision that frozen embryos are effectively people, which caused such a big ruckus over in vitro fertilization earlier this year. And you can see how the politicians all scrambled over that. Without further ado, I want to just thank you all for coming, and please give a warm welcome to Bill.
Did you say Happy Mother's Day?
Oh, all right. You're good. Hang on. Okay, so Pauline has reminded me for a second time this morning that I should wish all the mothers in the audience a fine and happy Mother's Day. And I will text my wife from my seat. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, as mentioned before, this is the topic we're talking about, the recent Supreme Court decision in Alabama concerning embryos. Now, that's what it looks like, okay? It is all these people versus the Center for Reproductive Medicine. To make it a little simpler, all right, these are the plaintiffs. You got three couples there. All right, we'll worry about the names particularly. And they feel that the embryos that were destroyed, all right, was a wrongful death. And the defendants here, all right, Center for Reproductive Medicine, now on called the center. Okay. So, and pay particular attention, right, because you're going to see it through the entire one. Embryos and how they're defined in this decision. So, little history. Come on. There you go. A little history. All right. Originally, what happened at the center, all right, is that is that all right, a customer, all right, or a client, if you want to say it, all right, of the center, all right, snuck in and actually took some embryos, all right, from their storage unit. In the process of taking those said embryos, all right, these embryos are kept in very, very cold and actually, it's feeling rising.
Probably liquid
Nitrogen, okay. All right, and when touching this, drops the embryos, thereby destroying. Now, the parents, right? Oops, sorry about that. The parents sued for wrongful death, right? Or if they couldn't get wrongful death, then negligence. All right, so they couldn't say, "Hey, you killed my children." All right, well, at least we can sue you because this costs us a lot of money, you know, and hardship and being on. All right. So the initial trial judge, right, said, I quote, "Cryopreserved in vitro embryos involved in this case do not fit within the definition of a person, quote unquote." All right, now, all right, all appeals were upheld on this ruling, so all formal appeals, right, before it got to the Supreme Court, all right, upheld that ruling.
Alabama.
Yes, Alabama Supreme Court, yes. All right, upheld that rule that these embryos do not fit, right, the definition of a child. So you can't call wrongful death. So here's what the Alabama Supreme Court said. All right, first of all, wrongful death is upheld. All right, because of the text of the wrongful death of a minor act. We'll talk about that in more detail later, but there is a statute on the books in Alabama, right? The wrongful death of a minor act. All right, so it applies to all children without exception. That in itself doesn't really upheld the ruling. Right, the court's precedents right, do not compel creation of an unwritten exception. In other words, we don't have to create any law here, all right, because we do have a precedent on the books, which was in 2011 in Mack versus Carmack. Right, the court determined that wrongful death lawsuits apply since life begins at conception. Sorry, I used the word, but
Fertilization.
huh?
Their word is conception.
Yeah, their word conception. Yeah. All right, so here's the rule. All right, that is the conclusion. The lower court, all right, ruled that wrongful death is dismissed. They reversed that decision. All right, for the wrongful death claim because the plaintiffs alternative negligence and all right, since they ruled that it really was a wrongful death, all right, the negligence that isn't even part of this anymore. All right, so it's kind of like to say, in other words, those embryos fertilized, all right, by IVF are children. Now, following this ruling, IVF clinics in the state of Alabama free, and they closed immediately. They just stopped all treatment at that point because they were in limbo, right? They didn't know if they could be sued, arrested, charged with a crime, all right? Everything they did was now up in the air, and they had no, oops, sorry. It was up in the air, and they had no idea what the consequences would be. So we have these judges, and we'll go through all the names. All right, as you can see, 8 judges, 7 of them concurred. One had, was a little upset about something, and only one dissented of these 8 judges. And I find it very strange that the court has 8 judges. But, Alabama Supreme Court, all 4 judges are elected, and I don't think it's a leap to say, not unexpected that all of them are Republican. All right, now, we've been talking about IVF or in vitro fertilization. So let's talk about it. Oh, by the way, before I get into this, I just want to say that I have no formal training in law or medicine. So if anyone out there spots something that I said incorrectly, your help would be greatly appreciated. So it's a 5-step process.
Before we start, can I ask a question?
Sorry,
What's the difference between conception and fertilization?
what's the difference between?
Conception and fertilization. Is it early?
Yeah, you can answer that one.
They're not synonyms? No, my opinion,
But it's a legal term.
my opinion is that fertilization is well defined, okay, it's when the sperm meets the egg and so on. But what happens in the popular media, you hear that called conception. Once you call fertilization conception, you concede the argument. So I'm very careful in using the word fertilization to mean the union of sperm and egg, and to use the word conception as ambiguous.
It's a funny term. It's like illusion versus conspiracy.
Maybe.
When I remember collusion, there's no collusion. That's because that's not a legal term.
Okay, yeah.
So conspiracy.
I thought conception was when not only fertilized but any plants neither fall. Am I wrong?
That I don't know.
I don't.
I thought that was when the man and woman think they conceive.
That's very true. You don't hear a couple saying we want to fertilize.
Well,
My lawn.
speak for yourself.
Thank you.
Oh, I had a question.
Sure.
Do you know the lower court judges and the appellate judges, are they also elected in Alabama?
That is, sorry. Don't always. All right, so yes, IVF, in vitro fertilization. 5 steps. Right now, a typical treatment takes 2 to 3 weeks. Now, typical meetings could be longer, but generally speaking, 2 to 3 weeks for this process to go through. Now, so you got the first one, all right? Boost egg production through super ovulation. I saw that word and just, whoa. Super ovulation. I love it. It's done through injections of either drugs or hormones. All right, and it produces more eggs than normal, so they can be harvested, that's another term word. All right, so they can be harvested by the body.
Aren't eggs though a limited number that have been produced? They're produced at the beginning of the person's life,
Yes.
and then their number is limited.
Okay. Yeah, a female is born with a certain amount of eggs and that's it.
So it's not really boosting in production, but it's the release.
Well, it's the release, ovulation, yes. So it's more eggs are released, yeah. Okay. So they remove the eggs, all right, and they collect sperm from the partner or donor, and then they unite the sperm and the egg. 2 ways of doing this. They can just usually combine it in what they call an incubator, petri dish, but a little more sophisticated, all right, and just let nature take its course. Or they can do like what you see here. All right, they can take 1 sperm and directly inject it into an egg, which the technology to do that was astounding. Next, the embryo was developed for 5 or 6 days. All right, so that's basically what it looks like, right? Now, the embryo at this moment is the size of a woman's egg, right? Approximately 100 microns, as I said, right? About the thickness of a human hair. All right, one thing I found really interesting in looking at this is that, all right, the embryo development, all right, consists first of a cell, all right, and then a membrane, all right? The egg forms a membrane once fertilization is achieved. And as the cells are dividing inside this membrane, all right, so 1, 2, 4, 8, right? They get smaller and smaller and smaller because the size of that membrane does not change. I thought that was really fascinating.
For a while.
Well, eventually, yes, but
Excuse me, Bill, could you point to the soul in that picture?
Is it so?
Okay.
Not that it's so well you. You mean you don't see it? So I'm looking at even the clinic website, medical website, the medical definition of conception. Is beyond fertilization. The medical definition is not only are you going to be fertilized, but it has to implant on the uterine lining.
Okay.
And after it's implanted on the uterine lining. Then 11 days later. So when you go to fertilize, idea, fertilize, and it's multiplying and so on. The doctor's next step would then be to try to implant it on you. Only if it sticks is it considered medical conception.
So there's got to be ambiguity on this, the 23.
What's the statute say? Can you show that statute? Bill, can you show that statute again?
say again.
Is that possible? Could you show the statute again? What's that statute? What's that say? What word do they use?
The Alabama one,
In which one?
It is Alabama law.
very beginning, the definition.
First slide.
So in the text of the court case, does it use the word conception or fertilization?
I
Don't know that.
I didn't memorize it. All right, I don't
You had
remember.
that spot.
Huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, that was just cover, but
That's just no.
Was the one,
Embryo. Use the word embryo.
yeah, they just use the word embryo.
Doesn't say.
Yeah.
Difference.
It doesn't distinguish. Look up there.
I was like this, though. I didn't bring it up, but next friends.
Well, it couldn't be attached, so this is in the thesis, so it's not attached to the uterine wall.
Right.
So that's not.
It's not even in people.
Fertilized.
It cannot be in people, so it's not conception.
It's not.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up. Very good. Very good.
No.
Okay, so the last and final step is, all right, to transfer the embryos into the uterus. And it's pending, so we know it's growing. I must confess, I still have them. There is a point in this process where naturally the membrane is broken, and that's what allows the excuse me, and that's what allows the embryo to attach itself to the uterine wall.
Oh, so all of this is taking place prior to implantation.
Yes. Yes.
It's floating around.
Well, yeah, it's in
In a natural process,
in
not even an
right,
IVF.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So remember I talked about the wrongful death of a minor act, right? Written in 1872. However, over the years, all right, the legislature does review laws. All right, and they say, yep, that should still be a law. And the last time was in 2023. So they may have tweaked it here and there, but basically, this is the law that was written in 1872. As you can see, all right, it talks about, all right, the wrongful death of a minor, all right, is when the death of a minor child is caused by the wrongful act, omission, or negligence of any person, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that's the establishment that they have here, all right, there is, that's something that, there is wrongful death. All right, okay, we got wrongful death. And I'm worried with all the other legalese. All right, now, in 2018, well, come on, there you go. In 2018, this amendment to the Alabama Constitution, all right, was passed. Fetal Personhood Amendment. However, in 2018, Roe versus Wade was still in effect. So this meant nothing, because it was unconstitutional to the US Constitution. All right, but I talked about recognizing and support the sanctity of unborn life and the rights of the unborn children, including the right to life. All right, public policy, right, ensure the protection of the rights of the unborn child, and nothing in this Constitution secures or protects the right to abortion. So in 2018, it didn't mean anything.
But this still, even with Roe v. Wade being in effect, this still could have supported a wrongful death claim.
Yes.
When the mother is not choosing to terminate the pregnancy, it's some outside force has caused this death of an embryo.
This is true.
So,
Yeah,
so
this is true.
still would be.
All right, so,
Sorry for actually something.
yeah. Yeah, or, you know, if a woman was pregnant and I don't know, was a drug addict, and somehow that caused the fetus to miscarry. All right, you want to weigh out on religion? I'm sure somebody could come up with that, you know, with that rule.
So this applies to fetuses.
Yep.
Not embryos, right?
Ah, yes, it does.
But it applies to embryos too.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so even though
Because-
it's fetal, which is a lot,
All right.
weeks after fertilization.
All right, because here's the important part of all this, unborn life. That's really vague. Really vague. All right, and the Alabama Supreme Court chose to jump on that and interpret it the way they wanted to. Now, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court did not write the opinion. All right, however, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Parker, he did write a concurring opinion. And I'll just give you the highlights. This goes on for 42 pages. All right, and yeah, I know you can read it yourself, but it amazes me. This is the first paragraph. A good judge follows the Constitution instead of policy. Let's establish that. All right, except when the Constitution itself commands the judge to follow a certain policy. In these cases, that means upholding the sanctity of unborn life, including unborn life that exists outside the womb. To me, that is a huge leap from what the laws they have, the precedents they have, all right, and that conclusion. So he talks about, right, sanctity of life and how the common usage of the phrase continued into the 21st century, referring to the view that all human beings bear God's image from the moment of conception. His words.
Doesn't Alabama have, it can be put to death, or
The capital punishment.
yeah.
Well, yes, but I think it just happened recently. I think they put somebody to death a couple months ago.
But
There's the next.
Right, he's right. Yeah, very good, thank you.
Taking something.
Yeah,
When I could get liberated when I opened the freezer.
So how does that join with putting someone to death, this law, you mean? This is about unborn life.
Well, I guess they could use without adequate justification, like they explain,
Whatever they think it is.
because it was.
yeah, no, you're right, using this ruling, all right, that person who snuck in, all right, and dropped the embryos could be put to death. All right, I mean, they're making legal leaps all over the place, so, you know, look at that.
So unborn life is, the sanctity of unborn life, surely they have sanctity of born life too.
No,
Well, not this opinion, no.
Yes.
It's on the time.
Okay, and to continue, all right, one of the things, one of the laws he quotes is from Genesis.
oh,
So he's going back in Genesis, what, 3,000 years? Yeah.
And how much?
Talk about common law, right? And he uses the image of God, right? Someone else he quotes as legal precedent is Thomas Aquinas, right? Who, all right, he was a priest, all right, lived from 1225 to 1275. So I guess it's better than Genesis because that's the 13th century.
I'm the image of God.
Yep, there you go. Yes.
United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, right. You know, I'm feeling that. Say that.
United States Supreme Court, go on.
United States Supreme Court. Thanks, man. United States Supreme Court Justice Scalia used a reference to the Bible when he stated that sodomy was okay because it was in the Bible. So that laws against sodomy were okay because it's stated in the Bible that it's an abomination, it's a sin. So for Texas to have a law against sodomy was perfectly fine, and that's why their law stood when it came in front of the Supreme Court. So Scalia has used that
Mhm.
same reasoning that the United States officers. But you know,
These clauses do not support their argument whatsoever, because first,
It depends how you look at it.
well, when I'm looking at it, it says that human life is fundamentally, but it doesn't define human life, so that's an open question. And then Thomas Aquinas says, the life is important because man possesses the natural aptitude for understanding and loving God. I don't think an embryo has an aptitude for knowing and loving someone. So
Okay, no, I agree, I agree. However, if you believe in the soul, all right, depending upon how far you take that argument, all right, this being may have been aware, all right, and alive, for lack of a better term, even before fertilization.
Yeah, St. Paul says, he knew you before you were born.
Right.
God may have done it, but do you know God before you're born?
And in
Well,
those
if
days,
you can take it, you know, you can take that argument as far as you want to go. Because you're rating it all up.
and the common concept in the Middle Ages was that insolvency occurred when you feel baby terror. Right, and so, but yeah, so this is all over the place, and people's notion of where to draw lines is all. It's not-
And I would also, he's quoting Genesis, I would like to know the Talmudic position on abortion. And I think the Talmudic position is that abortions are not against the law of God.
Right, so, yeah.
Yeah, 40 days, right?
Yeah.
But ours is a Christian name.
40 days.
Yes.
Yeah,
And,
but Genesis is the Old Testament.
Ah, right, sorry, it's not King James,
Yeah, right.
so it doesn't count.
Well, what's like in Genesis? Genesis is from the Pentateuch. It's from the Old
Yeah, you
Testament.
mentioned Talmud, right, it's not.
What is it?
King
Yeah,
James.
but the Talmud is the interpretation of Genesis.
No.
No.
No, I agree with you completely. Okay, I agree with you completely. But once you start quoting Genesis in a legal argument, all right, and a legal opinion, all right, you've lost, all right, in my mind, credibility.
And also, I don't see why they're so worried, because the soul can be killed. So,
Good point,
so it goes on.
good point.
Does that mean so we killed? I don't know.
Okay,
And not, actually.
okay, all right, guys, yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah. All right, so finally, all right, we believe that each human being from the moment of conception is made in the image of God. Strangely enough, he did not say fertilization, since this was IVF, right? All right, and here's my favorite. God is mentioned 41 times in his concurring opinion.
So my question is, why isn't that just an outright violation of the establishment clause of the First Amendment and the whole thing just? Absolutely. And, you know,
If this is taken to the US Supreme Court, we may find out.
no, we won't.
Oh, no, we'll find out, one way or the other.
It'll be the other.
I know, but what can I do? All right, now, after all this has gone on, they make this decision, Supreme Court says, here's the way it is. And as I mentioned before, the IVF clinics read, everything shut down, all right, including people who were in the middle of the treatment. All right, so all those unlucky women who were in the middle of their super ovulation, I can't believe that's a pleasant experience. Not that I would know. So the Alabama legislature, seeing, all right, and I'm sure hearing, all right, the complaints from their constituents, and IVF is not a cheap, all right, procedure. All right, so the people who go through this have money. And we all know what money does. It talks. So the Alabama legislature passes the IVS protection law. All right, so The bill provides, quote, civil and criminal immunity to patients and clinics during IVF services. All right, so Alabama patients would have a code around them, right, as they do the IVF and how they treat their embryos.
The cone of silence.
Well, they're just a code of law, all right, code of immunity,
Okay.
right, they are immune, all right? And this really brings up a problem, when you're talking about the Alabama, decision. Because, all right, okay, what will happen is that sometimes our embryos will be donated, all right, for medical research. I'm sure they're not too happy about that either. Just one second, let me finish here. All right. Occasionally, right, they will contribute them to other couples. All right, or they discard them. That's a real thing. Okay, so it's right, it gives doctors and patients, right, legal cover, right, to go to treatments. All right, the IVF clinics, routinely discard, as I said, it's this is completely contrary to the decision that was just made. However, the Alabama's legislature says it's okay.
But aren't the Supreme Court over the legislature?
Not until, all right, not until a law is challenged. Right? I mean, if the Alabama legislature said it's illegal to eat peanut butter, all right, until it, until I went to court and somebody said, hey, I'm skipping,
So this,
it would be the law.
this is like, iffy here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually, that's really great, because that leads me
Next one.
to the next slide. All right, so these are some of the points I think would be good to discuss. All right, could the Alabama Supreme Court find the new law unconstitutional? Given what we've just been through, what do you think? And someone raise their hand so they can give their opinion and, so we don't have everybody screaming at me all at once. Which I really feel like is there.
That's all I needed to say, but this is all because liability is going out the window by Supreme Court Justice Alito. And his reasoning was that from the leaked one, that I don't know the actual one, but the leaked judgment, but in there he said, because liability in a remote location of a developing country is different than the liability in say, Minnesota. He doesn't compare Minnesota to Alabama because I guess that would have shown a stark difference between blue states versus red states with respect to healthcare and reproductive healthcare. But and aside from and leave aside the fact that the United States Constitution is not valid in a remote location in a developing country. So this is where the problem is liability, but that was a good ruling.
Anyone else want to talk to that first point? Because I never
Already do that
hear
here.
I get it from you. And you see this law being passed, I don't know if I feel that comfortable.
Yeah, that's up and running.
You what?
Or the IVF clinics up and running now.
Yeah, they are, yeah, but you gotta think. If someone sues me as the clinic, it could go up to the court and then I'd be held liable because the Supreme Court is really on us. So, I'm not quite sure why the law reassured them, I guess it makes them think, oh, well, at least it would take a decade to resolve.
That is true, yeah.
But,
Well, I think the reason why the IVF clinics are not so worried is they see the backlash. It's conceivable that these kooky Alabama Supreme Court justices will do the exact same thing again, because nothing has changed as far as their minds. But I think the states, including like Arizona, it's such an unpopular opinion. And in this day and age, there are so many people that can only conceive a child with IVF that It's just created this huge backlash, right? It's not, you don't have people like that, the Cherry Lake, or, you know, all these groups that are, you know, oh, well, my dead body will be unfortunately, even they're back in the way, because they see it's really hurting the Republicans. So it's a practical reason that I don't think they're gonna attempt to overturn this law yet.
I think it's wrong, all right, but I think it's something like 1 in 9, 1 in 8, 1 in 10.
Yeah.
You know, children will be conceived, all right,
Was the law passed, was the law passed
immediately.
after the court decision?
Oh, yes, after the court decision, yes.
So that would be equivalent to a court.
Unless they decide to put that law.
Well, yeah, but yes, they'd have to decide that law, but you're right, but they probably, since the law seems to have been passed in response to the judgment of the court, then that's probative to the court on review, if it's challenged.
It has to be challenged in court of law, right?
Yeah, and it probably.
I would imagine it. I would imagine it would be,
Yeah.
eventually.
Right.
Yeah, however, consider yourself a politician in the state of Alabama. All right, and as we all know, the #1 job of any politician is to get reelected.
It's the only job.
All right?
Yeah.
It is, yeah, okay, 1 through 6.
Every court.
So they are reacting to their constituents, all right, and especially the rich ones, because they're the ones who can afford this. All right, and saying, yeah, okay, we'll take care of it.
Which every court knows and understands, and that's why every court says, if you don't like what we decide, go get your legislators to pass a law.
Or,
And that's what they did.
or in Alabama, allow someone else's bench.
Of course,
However, they don't know what in the first place, I'm sure, but they knew what they were.
And it would take a long time to change the membership of the court to the point,
Right.
but they probably only elect 2 of them every year or something.
I should have looked that up anyway.
I'm sure it's a rotating thing.
Any other questions? So I did have one question about the, go ahead.
The way I'm seeing this is that new law has created a protected class of people who are allowed to murder human beings.
Excellent observation. Yeah, very good, excellent observation.
How could this be challenged? That law?
Under the Alabama statute, if you go back to it, it says the mother or father can bring along the death action. Yes, now the embryo. But if they refuse to under that statute, then somebody else can apply to become the, I guess.
The next friend.
The next friend.
Next friend, there you go.
That's good.
Yeah.
So some kooky religious person out there could say, I want to be the next friend of this embryo and bring the suit.
Grandparents.
That's all right.
No, but I mean, respect the grandparents, which is, if the embryos were destroyed.
So we can move on to that next question about, do we see, these rulings occurring, rulings in other conservative states? And I guess a preliminary to that might be, we were talking about the backlash, because there was this backlash that might give other state Supreme Courts a bit of pause. But I gotta imagine, and I was gonna ask you this question, that there must have been times in history, particularly like during the civil rights era, where there was a ping-ponging back where the courts would strike down a law and the legislature would try and flip it and create a law that was also still unconstitutional. The courts would knock that down and then it would be a struggle, right?
Absolutely.
So that could happen with this in Alabama.
Absolutely, yeah, and usually the legislator prevails, not the, unless they have one. I don't know, and they believe in the image of God, but I gave them a copy of it, but legislation will prevail in most of the times. You know, the US Supreme Court, of course, relies on what they say they rely on. They say they rely on the Constitution of the United States, but, of course, that's the ultimate. And usually stops there, but then legislators will recognize it, and then therefore not pass law. So this legislature now, that said, we people are law, and the guy, and everything, so they passed the law, and the court, like that.
Just practically, it's
In practically, in this case, sure, I would not that, I would, idea plan.
And then that last question, will the backlash push things in the other direction? And make other states more, less likely to push the envelope in that
Yeah.
anti-choice direction.
I put that in there because if it can happen in Kansas, all right, it can happen in Alabama. All right, and the referendum in Kansas was passed overwhelmingly, three to two. Ohio said, well, they passed an amendment, all right, in Kansas was just a referendum. Ohio passed an amendment, which somehow is still not going into effect.
And what is that amendment or referring to choice?
To make it to try the right to an abortion, trying to stay confident.
It says more than that, but basically, yeah.
And it was very important that they defeated that the earlier attempt to increase the threshold from 50% to 60%, because the actual abortion enshrinement attempt only got to like 58 or so percent. So it really wasn't that.
So Florida is gonna be a challenge.
Florida is under 60% threshold. Recent polling said, I read it says 61%.
Really? Huh.
Oh,
So it's really on the edge. My daughter's very enthusiastic to vote for.
But I was wondering, like, what would the backlash be with some of these, all right? And an awful lot of these referendums are coming up, and they will be voted on in November. And I was brought back to 2004, all right, when a lot of states were having a law that was against gay marriage. All right, and that pulled the conservative / Republican voters out to the polls, who, well, they were there, all right, voted for George W. Bush. And I wonder, all right, if the Democrats would use that. For, yeah, well. When Will Rogers was asked if he was a member of any political party, he said, no, I'm a Democrat.
Oregon.
Oregon, I'm sorry, Oregon, I missed that. Oh, I had a great joke there and messed it up.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, the Democrats are looking much more organized these days.
Let's look,
Yeah, looking a lot less.
I just wonder.
We put a lot of Trump.
Would they do that? And it seems to be working out that.
I'm gonna use this forum to advocate for two political reforms that I think could be transformational, and I think they're on this. I'll start with the first one, which is advocating for term limits for Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court justices. The idea is that they would have 18-year terms, 2 would expire each 4 years or 2 years or something like that. Within any 4-year presidential term, that president would get to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices. That would normalize that whole process, and they've got to make things happen. So if you have an opportunity to advocate for 18-year Supreme Court justice limits, I'd like you to do that. The second thing, this may be closer in, is what's called Final Five voting, and that's a scheme advocated by Catherine Gill. The book is called The Politics Industry, and basically you have a open primary in stage 1 where anybody can run. It's one primary, you get 1 vote. The top 5 from that go to the next runoff, which is ranked choice voting. This can do a lot to normalize things. So it's maybe a little leap from this to that, but I think that the polarization of our politics, the Death Watch on the Supreme Court and other things really play into all of this. And these are 2 political movements that we can make some progress on here, and it can be transformational. I'll do all my soapbox. Thank you.
Can I comment on that first point? I mean, I think you're advocating this Supreme Court term limits because of the fact that you think it's political now.
Right.
And that would help. If you do the 2 year, whatever, every president do, you don't need more political.
Well-
Quickly, that was pure and unabashed politics. You know, you're at-
It even says, Trump got 3 and Biden gets none. Okay.
Well, I understand you have a problem,
Yeah.
but still, I don't know what your solution is. Because it really makes it much more political. One of them was Democratic, one they were Republicans sometimes. Lifetime fingers, keeping them out of politics.
I'll see you at DPT.
Thank you.
Now, you had a solution for the fact that term limits are dictated for senators and representatives, but not something to justice in the Constitution. So what? For president, or
Just for the president.
president,
Yeah.
but not for the fucking books. So how do we work on that?
Your constitutional right.
We need a.
Exactly, yeah, that's how the presidential term was, they're different legal theory.
Well, you were saying you can demote them to regular judges. But they're gonna challenge that. And they're-
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Unless-
but all federal judges have lifetime tenure. All Article 3 judges have lifetime tenure. Parsing the one that was, 18-year limit plus the periodic, musical court justice. What about just the 18-year limit? Okay, then you want randomized.
They just staggered, so it's 2 each term.
No, but I'm saying just the 18-year limit and forget staggering.
You better know what it is, but I have to do that.
Do we have any Supreme Court justices that are over 8 years old?
For Thomas, isn't it?
No, I think maybe it's late, they're mid seventies. But there's certainly have been.
They have it, yeah,
Right, I think that's, John Paul Stevens is about that, when he retired.
Yeah, Kevin was overrated in the job.
Is that a problem?
Well, yeah, because you're gonna be happy when Scalia turns 80 and not happy when Breyer turns. It's a problem.
Can I ask, could you explain the second,
Final five voting.
yes, in particular, what is it? Is this a petition? Is it a resolution? Is it a proposal in somebody's head? How do we access it and do anything about it?
Right. So the immediate thing to do in New Jersey is an organization called Fair Vote NJ, I think it's board that's advocating for this. Final four voting is in place in Alaska right now. Ranked choice voting is in place in Maine right now. Ranked choice voting was used in the New York mayoral race. So that's happening. The important thing is that voting rules are local. So you can do this for your school board, or you could do it in the county, or you could do it in the state. So that's the opportunity here, is because it can be done locally, it can get some traction and move forward. So go to either fairvote.org, nationally, fairvoteinj.org, in New Jersey, and I can send you some more information.
It sounded like what you were explaining was a two-stage process. Okay.
Right. For open primaries, get 5 out of that, and then later those 5 go on ranked choice voting.
And it's a nonpartisan primary, it's a single, but
The
it's.
first primary is not a
General primary.
general primary. If anybody can run, anybody can vote, 5 come out of that, and then you use ranked choice voting. It has a powerful effect in bringing politics towards the center.
And making it less divisive and negative.
But I think it has to be done locally for every jurisdiction, every
That's kind of the present way we're.
town, it could be by state, okay.
Right.
It's sort of similar to the way direct election senators have. If it's done in individual states, one at a time, for a while, until it became so obvious that was a good thing, that a constitutional amendment was passed. So it probably would be something similar with rank flexibility and final five, one of these systems, is that, you know, the laboratories of democracy, different states will implement it, and if that's shown to be a desirable thing, then you may end up with a constitutional amendment in the more distant future. But you still have the benefits in those states that adopted it sooner.
But in a state that's like super Republican, let's say.
Right.
You never get a Democrat.
But you get more
in
moderate,
that first
but you get more moderate people, so you.
Maybe it gives them a chance.
Just work everywhere but Alabama. If you work in Alabama, you would not get a Martin Taylor Green, you get a more moderate Georgia Republican. And similarly, in a very liberal state, you might not get a real firebrand liberal, you get a more moderate, because you have to elect.
AOC, yeah.
Yes, so you have to elect the,
Yes.
at least some acquiescence, some preference from the majority of that Western. And it's just something that earlier generations didn't even think about as a possible procedure. But it does seem like a worthwhile
They
way to
weren't so
select people.
back then.
And then, and the opportunity to tell things was part, you know, it's,
I have a question about, back to abortion. But yeah, there was a problem with, the origin, the way, with Roe versus Wade, because, viability changes over time. As technology advances, the age of viability shifts. There was an article recently in the newspaper about a miracle baby who was possible to keep alive at 21 weeks. So if we were ever to go back to reinstating a more sensible way to deal with this issue, then how to deal with that? I mean, 24 weeks is not fair if we can keep a 21-week-old baby alive out of its mother's womb. How do we construct a law that will account for this issue of changing liability?
the liability is, you know, this, that's cutting out. Yeah, to me, the viability threshold was never a good policy. Because it was trying to link the mother's rights to the technological capabilities of the society. One can imagine in a not too distant future, an ability to not only do in vitro fertilization, but in vitro gestation completely. And then you don't have any protection for the mother's choice. So the mother's choice is a completely separate issue from viability. It was put in there by the Supreme Court back in 1972 because it felt good to them. It seemed to ease their consciences in one way or another. I mean, you know, that's the way human psychology works. You make a decision based on a number of different factors, and you try and not tread too strongly on any of your scruples. And you know, something in the mushy middle feels good enough, and then you say, okay, I'll accept that. And so that's what they were doing. But it confuses the analogy with the rights, and I think that was a mistake.
If we don't have that test, these two technologies are moving on both ends. One is from the beginning of fertilization, and the other one keeping a baby alive. You know, even at 21 weeks and now later 19 weeks, and soon the process of making new humans is going to be completely free of human intervention, except for the sperm and the egg. Well, maybe at that point we'll get into. So how do we decide when life happens then? And we're going to face that same issue.
The theory that I heard was brain activity. You know, because you always hear a fetal heartbeat, right? When you hear quote unquote fetal heartbeat, it's not the heart. The heart hasn't been developed. It's just that cells will pulsate at a certain rate. And that's just part of the process. But they don't have a heart, right? When you hear a fetal heartbeat. Yeah.
And there's lots of issues here, so one of the issues here is the just general healthcare, and what is the moral status of the embryo or the fetus or the different stages relative to the mother? And my notion is that the mother's life always comes first, up until the point where they're separated, right?
You mean the birth elements?
The birth elements, right? But other different faith traditions and others don't feel that way. And I think the Catholic Church is pretty well known to feel that the child should be advantaged. I mean, I think that there's a lot of differences of opinion within Catholic teaching, but there are definitely some who will preference the child as being more important to society than the mother. And part of that is just not treating women as human beings.
Right.
So that, and they might, and if they knew, I mean, a lot of that doctrine comes before they had a notion of being able to tell the sex of the child. I can imagine that in earlier eras, if amniocentesis had existed, they would advantage male children over the mother, not female. Welcome to China.
Yes,
Right, so, so to me, the mother's life, so ectopic pregnancies, birth defects, all these various things, to me, the right of the termination should be pretty much.
But how about the fact that the mother's life is not in danger, and yet she does want to terminate her
So
pregnancy?
that's, to me, that's a separate issue, it's an important issue, but it's a separate issue, and so the question is, does society want to give a woman the opportunity to say, oh, a pregnancy, I am pregnant, and I don't want that outcome, and how long do you want to give the woman an opportunity to essentially renege, abort the process, you know,
And
it's like aborting a rocket launch, or aborting
When?
any other process.
just speaking of Mother's Day, and we'll get to you. Speaking of Mother's Day, I would like to hear a mother in this group to tell me that after 22 weeks, they could, after having this, after carrying this fetus, they could possibly make the decision that, oh, wait, I don't want it now. All right? If, wouldn't you make that decision much earlier?
but you have to understand, that's not really, to me, the bigger question is, let's say you find out that there's something wrong. That you're gonna,
On the 7th month, the 8th month.
No,
No, but I mean, but
Yeah.
you can't find that out
Yeah.
until, I don't know, 14 weeks. I mean, they don't do, right away.
Right.
You have to wait. And then you have a decision to make, and at least in New Jersey,
You're allowed.
it can happen.
Yeah.
There are places where you can.
And there are social reasons for late abortion. Most of the time, the advocates will talk about barriers that women face in order to get to abortion. They find out about pregnancy relatively late. They don't have the resources to get to a clinic or whatever, and so they end up making this choice relatively late. And then I think there's also the social situation. So I'm the woman. I find out I'm pregnant. My boyfriend is sort of okay with it, or whatever, and I'm happy. Then the boyfriend betrays me, or the boyfriend leaves town, or tells me he's not gonna be involved. Now suddenly my decision, my feelings about this pregnancy have changed. Do I have the option to say, oh, well, if the father is not in on this, I'm not in on this either?
All right, no, I understand, but when the great majority of abortions in this country occurring before 20 weeks, all right, usually before 15.
Sure.
All right, so now Now we're trying to pass laws based on anecdotal evidence. You know, and that's what the conservatives are doing, all right? You know, they talk about, you know, like our favorite saying, oh, yeah, they have abortions right before birth, you know, and I'm like, oh, my word. Well, you know, from so they have abortions. And I didn't want to go that far. Right, I didn't want to quote him.
Yeah, I'm not being baited by all this, I gotta say something.
Yeah.
And mind you, the whole issue comes down to, it's a mother's woman's choice.
Yes.
And we're being baited with this week's, that week's, this situation, that situation. We're all being baited into this argument. And we have to fundamentally understand or agree, at least people fear us, you know, people who are interested, have to realize this is a mother's choice, that's it. And whether she terminates her pregnancy or not, is a choice that she makes.
Thank you.
Either way, so the child is viable.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. It's a mother's choice.
How
For a
about?
mother to make a decision,
After the
for a
birth?
mother, the mother's the best person in the world to make that decision viable or not.
Even after birth, I mean, society has invested. Public education into their children, maybe, till age 17, maybe even beyond that, maybe this mother is 20-something years old. And she's been part of society, contributing member of society for her whole life. To think that even a born child, this is my thinking, I'm thinking that no point in which society value an unborn, or even, I would even go as far as a born baby over that one. You know, the Jewish law, it says that the lunatics weren't counted until the 40th day or the 44th day, right? Yeah. It's an old lesson.
Yeah, that was because so many infants died.
Yes.
And so you didn't want to get attached and treat this child like a child.
Well, yeah, but it's
Right, that was of its time. That was- Right,
And so, and children dying after birth is such a frequent occurrence until even the 20th century.
and women murdering their children, peasant women working with youths in some countries, it was routine for them. Very right there and suffocated because they could not, and they could not take care of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is something that should be applied in the 20th century, but I said this is not something to.
Right, so suppose you're a very poor family, and you just gave birth to this infant, and you can't feed it.
You can give up, we have, there are places you can give up a baby.
So-
Let's take
Right, so to what age,
Not right.
to what age can you give up, let's say you raise your child to 1 year or a few years, and your spouse died in a year, in a horrible economic situation, or you've contracted some kind of disease, to what age can you give a child an adoption?
Yeah.
Sometimes society takes the child, you know, say, this society tends to very not fit.
I don't see how at all. An unborn baby, even a born, being valued by society. Society has invested in this woman for decades. And she's a great citizen, and this unborn or born has not proven itself at all to be a good citizen.
But there are very few situations these days where where society has to make a choice between a born child and a mother's fetus. Right, so that. And I was gonna point out that in many societies that were a little bit more authoritarian, like ancient Sparta or whatever, society would evaluate newly born children and decide, oh, this baby's a little sickly, not fit enough, we're not going to test this child at all.
Oh, yeah.
And they would expose them.
Yeah.
And against their mother's wishes. Oh,
Even in the Americans here, sometimes the children that were sacrificed were usually children that were not gonna grow up and be able to take care of themselves, right? I wasn't going to get into this, but the one thing that always bothered me about the abortion debate
all right, is that the people who are against abortion, all right, never consider the best, absolute best solution. Don't get pregnant. All right, and and it comes down to sex. All right, Alabama, I don't know this for a fact, but I just know it's true. Alabama has abstinence-only sex education.
Oh, yes.
All right?
Oh,
All right, and the worst way to keep a young woman from getting pregnant is abstinence-only sex education. Right. All right, so if you want to reduce abortion, figure out the best way to not have unwanted pregnancies.
Contraception prevents abortion. I voted next thing.
Okay. And that's the biggest problem is it's complicated. Right. That doesn't go to the solution. Yeah.
The conservative forces in our society and other societies are interested in defending and returning to the more traditional patriarchal order, right? Which said women are supposed to be subservient. Sex is supposed to only be for people who deserve to have sex, who are married, and for reproduction. And some will say only for reproduction, and you shouldn't have too much fun, and you should always be, you know, under the watchful eye of the paterfamilias. It's that whole thing. So it's not about protecting the sentience of that embryo. It's not about you know, that abortion is murder. That's just the talking point for them. That's not what's motivating. What's motivating them is that more traditional control structure. And so they're not gonna go for sex education and birth control as a solution, because they don't want that sex to be going on. Right. And they think that that's just gonna be make people more promiscuous. And I believe that whole morality, that whole traditional morality evolved because of the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. And you actually see, because if you're a society that does that controlling and enforces monogamy, you can reduce the disease burden. Right? And so you have actually conservative people not wanting people to be vaccinated against HPV, not wanting people to have any prophylactics against sexually transmitted diseases, because they believe that it's the natural moral order that those sexual diseases should be the thing, one of the things that prevents young people from having sex in the first place. And they think, well, if we protect people from sexually transmitted diseases, they're going to be more promiscuous, right? So they have it backwards.
I don't think sexually transmitted diseases has anything to do with the foundation of patriarchy.
No.
The reason why we have these moralistic laws is because the males control the property and their descendants got the property, so they wanted to know exactly who the descendants were. Yeah, so that's why adultery is against the law and premarital sex is against the law, because I don't want my kid to start generating heirs that I don't control. So it's a foundation of patriarchy.
Only for the women. Yeah. So if anybody knows the answer, what age in child development, infant development, do human beings become sentient?
Like I said, I heard that.
Looking small, essentially up in the corner of those.
Yeah, right, here it is. So.
Is it the because being sentient, if there's a sentience that could be the determinant factor. But it's not
Pull the mirror up to the baby in the womb. It's not trying to do too much.
It's not. What is sentient and what is not sentient? What you guys see. We're going up the rails now. Okay. This is the fun part.
I'm a new member, and Steve's a new member. We just took on welfare. Since our problem, I am very concerned right now, we're talking about children and lives. And there are 600,000 living children so far in Rafah, in Gaza. And they are in grave danger. And we have seen where 70% of the people being murdered in Gaza overall in the last since October 7th have been women and children. So these were human beings with hopes. And I am very concerned about our lack of activity or lack of action or lack of sentience about what's going on. It's amazing how somehow people are being intimidated into not speaking out. And I've been going to city council here in Red Bank, I live in Red Bank, and trying to get a resolution passed because it's been done all over, it's done in New Jersey and all over, that would be sent to Biden and the elected representative, asking for three things: an end to civilian killings, humanitarian aid, full force, and release of the hostages.
And no bombs.
Yeah, well,
Why
first
stop
one,
sending bombs?
yes, well, it happens to ceasefire. Yeah. And I've been going since January, and the city council people and the mayor feel that it's not an issue for Red Bank, although we're paying our tax money for it. And it's not local. It's not local, and what's the other thing? And it's not relevant in Red Bank, and it'd be divisive. So I don't know if anybody is interested in helping me with this, by coming to city council meetings. I am the coordinator for the Amnesty International chapter in South Jersey for the last 30 years. So I've been deeply involved in human rights work, and to me, this is not any very religious, it's human rights. So, you know, I would really, really be most appreciative if there are people who would be willing to come to city council or give ideas of how we can do. And because unfortunately, we've been on here 4 years, we find migrants from Ocean City, New Jersey, because of flooding. So we came here 4 years ago, so I'm still kind of considered a little bit of an outsider, even though I know all of the council people in there individually. But we need some locals. And so
Aren't they saying that they're so busy dealing with local issues?
Yeah.
They don't even have the bandwidth. They don't have the time, or they don't.
we said that either. I know that could be said, and the biggest issue I believe in Red Bank is there's no journalists, there's no newspaper, there's nothing to show any alternative voice except the mouthpiece of this council, which is the Red Bank thing. Otherwise, there's nothing.
That's a national concern.
Yeah, so anyway, if anybody's interested, no push, but it's really the extermination of the Palestinians.
I would really like to hear a bunch of Sunday on all the background of embassy, Israeli, Hamas issue. We must be honest, a lot of it.
I wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I could consider myself a human being, and I do know I've had a big learning curve in all of this, and anybody else, and
I think you have to, put it on the, and assume, this is not an object, and I grow up.
Would you be interested in?
yeah, I would, because of the cost.
Yeah.
You can see the sort of level of informality, you don't have to be,
And I just want to say that I've never found a group in Red Bank that are like you guys, and I'm so appreciative to have found communities. Because I've gone to the black church. Nothing. I talked to the rabbi. He said it was a follower of Netanyahu.
Oh, good
David Harrison, the one on Maple, yes, the wire. And I was very open to it, and we, have a discussion. He said, I'm sorry, and all he would talk about is just rubbish, just shouting me down. And then he wanted my husband's to do that. So if you want to come over right after the conversation, to grab Steve into the conversation. So, you know, I've found many channels with great hope. But I've been really, really disappointed with, and the only group that has helped are young people. Right. And I had to join Instagram. Because I never knew it was market and whatever else, so I've been going to different council meetings, I've been participating in marches and supporting all the kids, and they have turned out in relationships.
I like a good argument on this, really,
Yeah.
and you might be able to see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and,
right.
and maybe there's two talks in your future, one on the Gaza war and another, more generally on Amnesty International, what you're gonna have to do with that. Because those are separable topics that might be too.
No intertwined.
Yeah, well, many things are intertwined, for sure, but,
Don't push it.
Well, once you do, it's a lot of fun.
No, you guys are really incredible. I'm so grateful. I still go to, I have the Amnesty group in South Jersey, the whole group. And we have a dynamic group. And we've been doing it for so many years. And this reminds me of the Amnesty group. And so if anybody wants to see a copy of the resolution, to see what we're trying to do, there's any, you know.
I'm not a Red Bank resident, no, like, we don't live here.
Yeah.
I would assume, you know, like, these people.
No, I mean, you can still come and your customers are there. Maybe. They can afford. Yeah.
Can't tell each other support, but we can get up and speak, I'll have to do it.
Right, it's just very exciting. And it's just altitude. And originally, I don't know.
That's okay,
So just think about.
we still like. We still like.
That's funny, I didn't even think about that, I'm not actually a resident of Red Bank. You're a postal customer.
Yeah.
Red Bank also.
All right, well, it's new, all right, obviously, you can continue going you want, but, you know, anybody has to go, all right, it's new.
Thanks, Bill. And so everyone, well, I'm not even going to encourage, a lunch today, I can't make it. I encourage everyone to, you know, celebrate the mothers in your life.
Yeah, we're not even excited.
Sure.
Can I actually-